And I was thinking, I need to get fit, I'll just go for a walk. And it's the hill over the back here. Probably not even a hill, it's probably a slope. But at the time, it was a mountain. I could barely get up it. And it really isn't that steep. But it's a biofeedback and it's a measure. That's the measure. And so the next time I do it, I just want it to be a little bit easier. And I still walk it now. The reinforcement and ritual of, okay, yeah, I can still do this.
In this final episode of Season 5 of the Make Movement Matter podcast, I'm talking to Mick Cope. Mick didn't grow up sporty. In fact, he didn't even really think about exercise. Life was full of music, family and good times. But over the years, the weight crept on and so did the drinking. So what changed? A single walk up a local hill. In this conversation, Mick shows how awareness that he couldn't continue on the path he was on in life led him to this one walk that led to a habit, then a passion, and eventually to walking the Camino countless times. Now he's inspiring others to do the same. When a form of movement helps you turn your life around, you really want to share it. We're going to hear about how your newfound passion for walking has done that for you and where it's taken you. But let's start, if you may, by painting a bit of a picture about what life was like for you before you found walking.
I think it was really good. When you were experiencing life, I mean, I was massively overweight and I was a heavy drinker. But at the time, it's awesome. You're having real fun. But then there is a dawning realization that maybe you want to change. But it was awesome. It was like party time, and party time and food time and sweet time.
And for how long would you say that you were in that sort of party mode?
I guess when I got married, because I used to be slim, and then we got married and just couldn't go out, 3 kids, and then you start having a drink, then it's another drink, and then the special brew, and then the Thunderbird wine, and I guess I never really thought of that. It was 15, 20 years of just a slow growth of both the amount of alcohol I was drinking and also my size.
Right.
I went from probably 11 stone to 23 stone, I guess. It was about that.
Yeah.
But it's like the analogy of the boiled frog. You never quite realise it. It just happens.
Creeps up.
Yeah.
But as you say, you were happy. You were enjoying it. But something shifted. So at what sort of age did something shift for you?
It's trouble. I don't have a past timeline, but I think it must have been the early 40s, and often when we are unfit, we generally know, but we just hide it with more drink and sweets. But I think it was about the early 40s, probably, when there was a big dawning realisation that life had to change.
And was that based on how you felt in your body? As in, I often think that we all sort of come to we all have a baseline, and if your baseline is partying and enjoying, and you're really seeing the fun in that respect, but you're trying to sort of potentially push away the things that don't feel so good, because that is but your baseline's at a different level, so you don't know how good you could feel. Did you feel anything in the body particularly?
I think the interesting thing is, because I was never, as a child, really athletic. I was never physical. I didn't do anything. You do the mandatory PE at school that I tried to get out of. And from the age of 14, I was a musician. I was playing in the pubs at 14. So my life was music, it comes with a lifestyle. And then it was kids, and then it was career. So at no point did I do anything at all physical, nothing. Nothing.
And what did, because obviously there's been so much about the importance of physical activity in probably about the last 20, 30 years. If you heard those messages, what did you think?
Oh,
Or can you remember?
I wouldn't have heard them.
Yeah. Okay.
No matter, I would have tuned them out. They would have been not for me.
Yeah.
Which I guess the interesting thing now, I've become more evangelical about it. It's when you say stuff to other people and you can see the light the other side of the wall, but they can't, and you can't make them see it.
No.
But you try and share it, but you can't say there's something coming down the track and you can't see it, but it's going to hurt,
But I think always the benefit of the saying and still saying and keeping saying is that you're potentially planting a seed, and
Yes.
that seed can take a long time to grow for some plants, but it may just rear up just at the point potentially it's needed, and hopefully not before it's desperately needed. I always think that's the point. It's a bit like when you talk to your kids and you keep going on and on about the same thing that you think is really important, and they're pushing against it, and then 6 months, a year, 2 years, whenever it is later, you hear them saying it to someone else.
Absolutely.
Because it's gone in, they've absorbed.
Yeah, and you just it's like when the student is ready, the teacher will come.
Exactly.
But it's heartbreaking when you watch people and you go, you're going to get old really fast. You don't realise it till you get old really fast.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, which is why I was asking about the sort of age and the time scale, because as you say, it's often not until a certain point in someone's life where that reality starts to dawn, because there are things that are really important to you at that point that, for example, at some times it's grandchildren, where suddenly someone sees the grandkids playing on the ground and they're struggling to get down and up, and they can't be active and be on their level. There's something that changes, and sadly it is usually a bit later.
The turning point for me, I think it was early 40s, because my eldest has got learning difficulties, and I felt unwell, and you do the Google search and you're convinced you're going to die. And I sort of sat in the garden on my own, convinced it was going to happen, and started crying. But I think at that point, I remember saying to myself, I have to be around longer. I've got to be around longer for him. And that was a significant moment when an acceptance of the truth.
Yeah.
That I can't just keep living for myself, because my lifestyle was selfish. If I'm in a partnership and if I've got children, doing what I want to do is driven by my needs and not accepting a broader responsibility. And that was, I think, the first recognition of something has to change.
And you linked that directly at that point to your lifestyle, or did it take a while for that to sink in? So if it was immediate, then you obviously had an inner knowing that what you were doing was probably quite destructive to yourself. And potentially to relationships.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Although the relationships one is interesting, because my son, he regularly used to say he misses the drunk, because as an introvert, I'm naturally quite introverted, but he misses the gregarious party animal, and that went.
Yeah. That fun time Mick.
Absolutely, just went, and he misses that.
Do you miss that?
I miss the capacity to do it, yes, but I think I've had to come to terms with the fact of, I think one of the reasons I drank was to become an extrovert.
Yeah,
it was a compensation, because my wife is a big extrovert, and I envy her capacity to be that person, but it's the nature of life. We're none of us is perfect, but certainly that it was a big compensatory factor. The drinking allowed me to be a different person.
And therefore the acceptance of who you are and what you have to offer, just as you, without the booze, basically.
Yeah.
Which the whole reason you're on here talking is because you've got so much to share now, and you're incredibly inspiring because of the choices that you've made. So, lean into that. Most definitely, because you've touched a lot of lives, but we're coming on to that. So you, in your words, you said, I just got tired of being a fat drunk. So how did you?
That's a good book title, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. I mean, it's written already. Absolutely, I can see it. I can see it. All those publishers listening. Most definitely.
Great, Wendy, Karen.
And a lot of people will hear that and sort of perhaps at a certain stage resonate. So, and that's what makes a good title. It's because it's so applicable and so relatable. And so you made that decision. You had an emotional moment where you thought about the next generation and who needs you around. But obviously made the connection, who needs you around in a good capacity, being capable, being reliable. So what happened then?
Nothing.
Love it. Okay. Let's stop the conversation.
It's because when I'm talking to people about it, the analogy I give is, and I don't know if the toy's still available. Do you remember the bucking Bronco, kid's toy? You load it up and eventually it flips. And so I think the process of change, some people are lucky and they just decide and that's it. But I think most people, it's a slow addition of things.
Absolutely.
And there's certain things that happen and sometimes looking back, it's hard to get the order, but I started to read about alcoholism and try to understand it because that's my natural preference. And I read a wonderful book by Tony Adams, the footballer, called Addicted. And I think it was Southend, because I live near Southend, and he was talking about he would he would take his kids out and he'd take them out for pizza, and he'd walk down Southend High Street. I think it was Southend, and the kids say, "Well, there's a pizza place. Let's go there." And he'll go, "No, let's go to the next one, And what was happening was some pizza places would sell beer and others wouldn't. So he was heading for the one where he could have a drink with the pizza.
Right.
And I thought, yeah, I'll do that. And so life gives you these small signals. And then I was working for a boss who was a drunk, and it was truly awful. If I wanted to have an important conversation, I had to have it between 9 and 10:30 before he would go to the pub, and then, and so it's about the universe, whatever, gives you these different signals, and eventually you go, okay.
It's you're putting on the awareness glasses of life, that you're putting in those new lenses, that make you see entirely differently, and you can never go back.
That's right. You can't unsee it. And then, shall I carry on?
Please.
The tipping point, and if I could bottle this, I would be a billionaire. I took the kids on holiday to Cyprus, and of course, as a drunk, you go to all inclusive. And it was a Tuesday night, and it was another boss I worked for, and he came to me in a dream, and he said, "Mick, it's the last hurdle," and I just stopped.
Wow.
And you don't know why, but I was ready to embrace that, because the thing is, I'd stopped lots and lots and lots of times. As an addict, you stop, and then you drift and stop and drift, and this time, and I won't. On the Tuesday morning, I decided to stop drinking, and what's interesting was, and I won't bore you with the details, but because of things that happened in the hotel, we were kicked out, which wasn't our fault. So I was on the doorstep, my wife and 3 kids on the doorstep of the hotel looking for someone to stay. It's another story, not for this podcast. But I didn't drink. and the irony was the awfulness of the situation was a real gift. You think, well, if I got through this,
Mm.
when I get back home, I can get through the next thing, And so, um, and that was it. That was it.
And it's a really key thing that you were then able to notice. So I think a lot of the time when we're not noticing what we're doing and we're living on autopilot, we don't get the opportunity to notice, and you applauded yourself. And that was probably something you'd hardly ever done. And I think it's that ability to come outside of yourself and applaud yourself and say, I'm really glad I made that choice, or
Yeah.
I did that thing, or I survived that thing, that gives you that sort of resilience for the future and that, energy to continue, because motivation goes. But that sort of self-congratulatory thing, which sounds sort of kind of selfish or whatever, is not at all. It's literally sort of joining up the loop so that you can continue on the loop rather than stopping without that final piece of self-congratulations that's so important. And I see that so much, that when people start to be kind to themselves and say, I'm really glad I took the stairs instead of the lift, or even though that thing was harder, I've done it, which means I know I can do it again, and this can build.
Yeah, and I totally, and I think the thing I consciously did was to talk about it.
Yes.
Because when I was working, I was a coach and a consultant, and so I would talk about that experience as part of a change process, and the gift that gave me was a continual refresh, and it is that continual noticing, and in talking about it, if you talk to 10 people, you see 2 people's eyes light up. You go, okay, yeah,
They're the ones.
they're the ones.
Yeah. And they're the
not to
ones
judge.
and they're the ones who are ready, as we talked about before. They're the ones who are ready now.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 or
At the
4
end of
more.
at the end of the session, they come up and have that little word with you, and you go, yeah, and this is, and if I can help, then, but that has to be their journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's
so you got home, and then I know from our previous conversation that there was a specific hill that you has always been nearby, but that you hadn't really, you looked at in a different way, let's say. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I knew I had to get fitter, and I didn't do anything. I mean, the most I would do is lift some bass cabinets for the next gig, and that was it. And I was thinking, and I thought, well, I need to get fitter. I'll just go for a walk, and it's the hill over the back here, and it's probably not even a hill. It's probably a slope. At the time, it was a mountain. It's another book title, isn't it? The mountain that became a slope. And just decided to go for a walk. And I could barely get up it, and it really isn't that steep. But it's that biofeedback to go, okay, yeah, it's a biofeedback, and it's a measure. Go, okay, right, that's the measure. And so the next time I do it, I just want it to be a little bit easier. And I still walk it now, and still, it's part of the reinforcement and ritual of, okay, yeah, I can still do this.
Yeah.
I think that's quite key.
And you do find it easier, I presume.
Well, I walk up it now with a rucksack.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
I'm sure you skip up it by comparison. So then you therefore you'd achieved something. And the thing I love about walking is the fact you can literally put your trainers, your walking boots, whatever on and go. There is nothing else you need to do. You're literally moving your body from A to B, preferably outside, and it can literally revolutionize the way you see your capability of your body.
Absolutely.
And so you'd kind of gone for sensibly the easiest thing to do that would get you on that sort of track of walking more. But you probably at that point didn't think, I want to become a walker. You just did it because you needed to get going.
And it was the easiest.
And it's the easiest. So, which I think is a really lovely thing for people when they are struggling and having the pressure of all these exercise messages about, you know, you've got to go to the gym and lift heavy weights, and you've got to, you know, do this big challenge or whatever. And it feels so far away. And actually,
Yeah.
the reality is 5-10 minutes walk. We're most likely doing that anyway throughout our day in little chunks, and that those chunks are really valid. But
Mm.
if you then can extend that to say, right, I'm not going to drive to the post box, I'm going to walk, and so on, that it can slowly build until you realize that you're actually finding it much easier, as
Yeah.
you did and have. So there's now a big fast forward, because you then made that a daily habit. Would you say daily, or a regular habit?
I think it was probably a daily habit. I think,
Yeah.
yeah. From memory, yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fairly compulsive obsessive, hence why I was a drunk, you know. And so it would have been, right, I do this, and so it just becomes normalised as part of what you do.
Yeah. Which is obviously the easiest way to then create change, because you've
Yeah,
formed a habit and it's a good habit.
yeah,
But that can be one of the hardest things for some people to do. But for you, that was a little bit easier. But it's also, you kept going. You committed to it. Um, And the reason that you wanted to come on here and talk was because you're really passionate about walking the Camino, which is an incredible route, which I can't wait to hear much more about. Um, so tell me, how did you make the leap, as it were, from those daily walks to thinking, I'm going to do distance, and I'm going to sort of set myself a challenge?
I think again, it's that, just that incremental growth, and then it's the um, then I watched a film, and it's the Martin Sheen film, The Way, and like so many people on the Camino, that's why they're there, especially Americans. That film has changed so many lives, and you watch The Way and think, yeah, I'd like to do that,
Mm.
um, and then just went and did it,
Yeah.
um, and it's another hill moment, because I did the short version, which is, which is incredible. My friends have just done it last week, and that's the one I'm doing next week with my son. Um, at the time, it felt like a mountain.
So tell me what that sort of distance and so on
That's
is to.
it's 117 kilometers.
And you do that over a specific amount of time, or
Whatever you want. I did
yeah,
the normal, if there's such a word as normal.
mm, average.
The book version would be over 5 days.
Okay.
So you're doing about 25K a day. But I think my wife was due to do it with some friends, but she's had a new knee. But the friends still went. I think they did it over 10 days.
Okay.
You you
So
you
it's up to
do
you.
you do whatever you want. The wonderful thing about it is there's so many hostels and hotels that you can stop at.
Right.
You choose your daily distance.
Yeah.
It's not like walking the Southwest Coastal Path, where you're having to carry a tent. It's literally
Yeah.
just you walk for as long as you want. So I did that for over 5 days, and the joy of getting to Santiago into the plaza was just like mind blowing. It's just, I'd never would have believed that I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you felt a huge
yeah.
sense of, what am I trying to say?
It's just joy.
Joy
It's just
and gratitude that your
yeah,
body had allowed you to get there, and your mind.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And tell me a little bit more about um, why walking makes you feel that way. What is it about walking that has kept you going doing it ultimately? Because you've got the tenacity, obviously, to continue to do something. Some people's worlds, potentially, that would be to move on to something else, bigger, more taxing in different ways, or whatever, more complex, um, which I really don't think is something you necessarily have to do, because I'm on the same page as you. I love walking. I'm sort of almost addicted to walking. But what is it that you really feel that is so special about walking?
Um, I think there's two things. One, at a generic level, and I was thinking about this morning. I can't think of, and I'm sure there is, but I can't think of any other exercise where there isn't an element of cognitive understanding needed as part of it. So if you're going to go to the gym, you need to know what to do. If you're doing Pilates, you need to know what to do. If you're going to go
Right.
swimming, you need to learn to swim. And I can't think of anything where there isn't an element of where you need to learn, and if you're overweight, it can be daunting,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't have time to learn, but walking, you just walk. There is no barrier to entry.
Yeah.
For me, the added bonus is, and the thing I think that really helped me to stick with it in the early days was my love of music. And so, a set of headphones and my feet, and it's my time to listen to my music. And I have certain playlists on Spotify, and I've now drifted into podcasts. That's my
Yeah.
time. The Camino last week was just all podcasts, which is, it's just it's an absolute joy. So, but I think it's that there is no barrier to entry. You can just walk, and I was listening to someone talk the other day, and he was saying that certain towns in America where it's really hard to walk.
Yeah.
And he was saying, who was I was listening to, and he was pulled over by the police, and they said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm just walking to get something to eat." And you go, "Well, why?"
Why?
Yeah, which would drive me crazy.
Yes, absolutely. Just taking a quick pause because I want to tell you about a new offer exclusively for listeners of this podcast. If you'd like to improve your mobility, strength, and learn more about moving well in daily life now and to train for your 90s, come and move with me in the Reclaim Movement membership. There's weekly live coaching in term time with hundreds of replays available, as well as hordes of 5 and 10-minute mini movement videos to follow throughout your day. I'm offering you a 15% discount on your first month's membership on top of the 7-day free trial. Go to reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to create your account and quote the code podcast15. Let's move together to feel better and keep doing all the things you love. Camino and other countries aside, we're so lucky in the UK to have such an incredible network of trails to walk on and places that, it's low risk as well. We haven't got like spiders that are going to do any damage, particular, whatever. So we really, really are lucky. And I know that from a mental health perspective, the fact that I can get out my door, not in a car, and within 5 minutes of walking through some houses, be out in nature, in the fields and countryside. Yeah. And I can do the same loop over and over, and people will be like, "You're not going to," no, I'm not bored at all, because I'm noticing different things on the way.
Absolutely.
And there's the familiarity is lovely. And I do go on lots of other varied walks too, but knowing I have that for me is now essential in my life. Absolutely essential. And if I was, my husband said, "Would you ever live in a city again?" We lived in London for 10 years, or we lived in central Oxford, and there's still lots of green spaces in Oxford, but still, now I need to have access to something greener. And I know not everyone has that, and not everyone has, the privilege to have that. I know I'm privileged to have that, but I know it's so important to me. But to be honest, if I go away and I'm on a city break, I love the fact I'm walking and seeing things in a city. So it's far from that you can't in a city.
I really love urban walking.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah. So yeah, but it's the fact that, you know that it does that for you. If you've tuned into that you can walk out your door. And I think that's the key bit, is that you're outside of the box. And you're immediately in fresh air and daylight, and you are getting the blood pumping just enough, and it just does something. And I'm pretty sure I've had Caroline Williams on this podcast, actually, with the very first episode I did, and she talked about the sort of metronomic thing where it can tune in with our heart rate, and how that creates this lovely system where you get it. And that's what I find quite meditative. And I do listen to podcasts and music sometimes, but actually more often than not now I don't, because for me it stops the noise. And I find that really calming. But anyway, back to the Camino, because what I'd love to hear more is about what it's like, because I'd love to go. So is it a very difficult thing to do in terms of the terrain?
Well, I think the key thing with the Camino is a broad generic term. In Spanish, it means the road, and so there are many.
Yeah.
And there's a network across Spain and France. And I met a guy last week. I think he'd walked from Germany met other people walk from Austria.
Wow.
You get some people walk from Canterbury. It's just a walk.
Yeah.
And so the typical one is the one I'm taking my son on next week, which is from Sarria. So you fly to Santiago, you can get the bus, train or taxi out to Sarria and then walk back.
Right.
And that's often the one people start on. And it has hills. If you don't prepare and you get blisters, then it can be hard. It can be hard. But it's doable. It's doable. And then you've got the last one I did, which was in the northwestern part of Spain, which is up in Galicia, along the coast. That was harder. You've got another one called the Primitivo, which goes through the Asturian Mountains. I mean, I did another Asturian Mountains, the San Salvador, and that was hard. I just met someone and they said, "Do you want to come on this?" I've gone, "Okay," and it was like,
Wow.
it was tough. That was tough.
And so what kind of distance is that over what time frame? Because it's usually that shorter time
The
frame.
one I'm out with my son next week, and I'm going back in August with my cousin, and that's 800 kilometres over 30 days.
Wow. That is a challenge.
Yeah. It's and then there's it's. I mean, the one that's been on telly recently is where they've done part of it. You can walk from Canterbury to Rome, which is another Camino, and that's about a 100-day walk.
Wow.
But
you're going to learn a lot about yourself in that time, and particularly if you're in a group, you're going to learn a lot about each other, I'm sure.
There is, and the interesting argument is, is to not go with a group, because one of the problems is if you go with a group, you just stick with that group, and the joy of the Camino is the people you meet. You know, I don't remember the places, but I remember the people.
So tell me about a few of the people you've met along the way, which is lovely, because often we can walk past someone and say good morning or whatever, but in the UK particularly, but you're much less likely to stop and have a chat, even if you see them quite regularly. But it sounds like it's much, much more social because you're all on a shared mission almost.
Yeah, I think the kind of the analogy is, you know, if you're in a lift in England, the last thing you want to do is look someone in the eye. But if the lift judders to a stop and after 2 minutes you're talking to people, right? Because there's an implicit permission to have a conversation about a shared experience. And the thing with Camino is when you do Camino, you get what's called a pilgrim passport.
Oh, lovely.
And you get stamps, and then when you get to the end, you can get what's called a Compostela, which is a certificate of completion. So when you're on Camino, you have an implicit assumption that you can talk to anyone because you are all going through shared pain. There's no barrier to communication. So for 24 hours a day, you just talk to people. There's no look of surprise, and so that's, as an introvert, that's really interesting because it ends up being lots and lots of conversations. It's added to the fact that I wear a hiking kilt when I'm walking, and so people keep saying you're Scottish, but in answering no, that then prompts a conversation, and so it's lovely. It's lovely.
I presume it's not sort of thick wool.
No, the first one I did was a thick wool one, and it was awful. It was I put it in the bin partway through. This is an American hiking kilt, and it's a microfiber, and it's absolutely stunning. It's just so light, and so many people I think have gone to order one when they've seen the web. It's great.
You're a walking advert for it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lovely piece of kit. And so, sorry, you asked a question.
So tell me, do any stories of people's stories jump to mind?
The last one I went on, when was it? I forget. 2 weeks ago. I was in Finisterre, and I'd finished a loop, and started talking to this woman, and I think she was Australian, and she'd had a few glasses of wine, but she'd walk from Saint Jean in France, and so she was halfway, and she was feeling a bit heavy breathing, and she was feeling a bit rough, and she went to the doctors, and she was rushed into hospital with pneumonia,
Oh my
and
goodness.
so she spent 3 days in Lyon, um, but then got up and carried on walking
Oh my goodness.
another 300 kilometers and got to the end, and she was incredible, and I think that's. I mean, I've seen blind people walk it. There was one woman walking with her child, her husband who was blind, and her dog. And if I'm moaning about a blister, I really can't moan about a blister. It really grounds you.
Yeah.
Um, you every person is unique. As a woman from Holland the other week, she'd walked from Seville,
Wow.
which is like 1,000 kilometers, but she was on this Camino, the Via de Plata. There's not a lot of services, and you're coming up from Seville up, and it's hot.
So how do you get water?
You carry it. You
Gotta
carry it,
carry it.
and you get to each town and you stock up. But it's she was hardcore. Now that was the first time she'd ever done it. You know.
Wow.
Oh, I'm in awe.
Yeah.
I'm in awe.
Yeah.
And there's another couple, because when you leave Saint Jean in France, when you're doing the French way, you walk over. The first day is over the Pyrenees, which is an interesting one,
Yeah.
and you get peaks of. There's certain peaks when there's lots of pilgrims, and as you get over the Pyrenees and you come down to Roncesvalles, there's a big monastery. And it's the hostel where people stay, and it was packed, and people couldn't get a bed. Now, luckily, I'd reserved something, and it was a married couple, and they slept in the woods with no tent. They slept in the woods with their sleeping bags. They were laughing about it, and you go, "How cool is that?"
Yeah.
They just embraced the moment. It was incredible.
And they had no choice, but at the same time, they just went with it. And
Well, the choice they had was they could jump in a cab
yeah,
and go, but they've gone, no, we'll just go and sleep in the woods. There's no bears, there's no boars,
no,
hopefully. So, and it's just every day you have a conversation where you go, okay, I won't moan about my blister because what you're going through is a lot harder than what I'm going through.
yeah.
Um,
And what about the age range? Is it quite a wide age range?
There was a guy carrying. Oh, last one. I think there was a guy and his wife. I think the wife had maybe a 5-year-old, and he was carrying his baby in one of those baby cradle things.
Yeah.
And they were walking the full distance. And then you regularly see 80-year-olds, 85-year-olds. I saw one another time. They were bandaged up, and they were. If they were walking from my house into town, I'd worry about them.
Yeah.
But they just do their bit each day. There's another woman I met, and I think she had COPD. She had a really bad chest problem, and she'd walked from France. But she did, I think, 10K a day. She walked at her pace. It was just incredible. Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
And then so you talked about the services on the way. So you carry everything that you need on your back?
You get certain bits. So for the Saria, because it's so busy, you don't need to carry anything. There's services every 5K. There's coffee, water, food. I routinely put on weight when I walk on it.
Really?
Oh yeah. It's just there's so many coffee shops and cake, and it's just others. But then you've got another part which is called the Meseta, which is the midpoint. And that's 200 kilometers. And I've not done that yet. That's what I'm doing in August, which is 200 kilometers of basically cornfields. And so you have to carry your water. You can walk 25, I think, K with nothing. So you then got to carry your stuff. And that can be tough because you've got no shade. And if you're walking in the heat, that's a tough one. But
you are carrying your bedding and your clothing.
I carry. I've got a rucksack. Which the recommendation is you carry 10% of your weight. I go slightly over that because I'm a bit of a freak for my toys, like my iPad and that. But I carry my sleeping bag and my clothes. But if you stop in the hostels, there's often some bed in there. You're not legally allowed to camp. Some people do, but you're not supposed to. But the most hostels would give you a blanket or something, that you can sleep under, or some people just sleep in their clothes.
Mm.
I've seen people sleep in bus stops if they can't get somewhere to sleep. It's
Amazing.
it's
But also that simplicity of living
absolutely.
it changes it all. And as a family, we went on a lovely holiday, but we had no bags. They stayed somewhere else in Europe for nearly our entire time. And it's really great thing to do. I've also travelled myself in the past where I did have everything on my back for a year, in fact. And it's like, as you said before, it's very grounding, because
It
you just
forces
realise that
you. Yeah.
none of it is important at all. It's all about experiences. It's all about people, and it's all about yourself and
Yeah.
whether you can survive it, I suppose. And of course you can, as long as
And
you're lucky enough to be able to afford food and water, then you can.
Oh, but the thing is, actually, I walked in Dorset weekend before last, and it's beautiful. The Southwest Coastal Path is incredible. I can't afford to walk it. It's just walking it. I mean, I fancy walking the Thames Path, but you're talking the cost of the accommodation,
right?
The cost of coffee, the cost of food. Whereas when I was in Spain, the last walk, I mean, I sat down, I had a coffee, and then they gave me a pastry with it, and they gave me 2 churros, which are the
yeah.
and that was £1.50. No, €1.50. And then ordered another coffee, and they gave me all the extras as well. Now, that in England,
you can't even get a cup of tea for £2.50 now.
No, so it's literally cheaper for me to walk in Spain than it. And I started the Southwest Coastal Path, which is lovely, but it's just so expensive, and B, because the bus services don't work as you need them to, you end up having to get a cab to each stage.
So very expensive.
It's just so it's effortless to walk out there, absolutely effortless.
Well, you're really selling it to me. I mean, to be honest, I've always been interested. It's just the time, but I will be making the time for sure. And so, tell me a little bit more about how you've now sort of rippled this. You said before you're evangelical about it. You're more evangelical, I sense, about the Caminos than you are about walking, but they're probably actually equal measure.
Yeah.
So tell me how you go around, and the reason that you wanted to come on this podcast particularly, and I love to hear about people's passion, is because you want to spread that passion. So tell me how it's rippled out in your life.
Yeah, well, I started then. Some couple of friends came, my cousin came, and then my wife fancied it, so she went. she's worse than me. She went with some friends, and it was about two and a half years ago. She's had a new knee since, and then got back, and with a day, she said, "I miss it." So she literally turned round 4 weeks later, jumped on a plane, and went and walked on her own.
Oh, wow.
And the one thing I would like to say before time's up is that I think it's really, really powerful and incredible is the number of solo women that walk it.
Right.
It is. I love it. It is so safe. I probably see more solo women than solo men.
That's amazing, because it's so rare.
Oh, and I think part of that is because when you're walking, so often you there's a pilgrim in front of you and there's a pilgrim behind you.
Yeah.
And you do get the police coming along, they're keeping an eye on it, but so many solo women. And I don't mean to sound sexist there, but
no, not at all. I think it's great because it is, even in this country, you're always seeing posts about how nervous women are walking and running.
Oh, it's incredible.
In built up areas. So
I live in a safe part of Essex. If my wife went down to town on a Saturday night, I'd be slightly concerned. There, she walked 117 kilometres, and on top of that, she managed to walk in what was a heat wave. So it's about 40 degrees. So she was up at 4 o'clock in the morning, walking in the dark on her own.
Wow.
So if any single solo women are interested, I can't say enough about how safe it is. And the hostels, I mean, people in the hostels are incredibly respectful. you're all, there's 10 people in a room, but there's a community that is so respectful and so safe, um, that is, it's so powerful.
Yeah, and that's
It
probably quite a rare thing to
it
find
is. It
in
is.
life, actually. So
Yeah.
so amazing to just even experience that. And I'm sure when you're sitting together to eat and so on, that you're hearing stories all the time there as
Oh, it's,
well.
yeah. And they do, if you go to whatever, well, it depends where you go, but you can get a community meal, which is like, I don't know, €13, a 3-course meal, including wine and stuff. It's lovely. And you're having conversation. As an introvert, I would never do that.
Mm.
It's my worst. It's my worst nightmare to sit down with 15 strangers. I would never ever do it. But when you get to the hostel, they say, "Oh, do you want to have dinner tonight?" You go, "Okay, yeah," and you sit down. And what happens if when you do a long, you get what's called the bubble. So when you start with people, you start at the same time. So you just keep meeting them.
Right.
And so the bubble rolls forward. And then the joy is you get to Santiago and you could be standing in the plaza, and then people are coming in who you recognise. And when I was out there last week, someone rushed up to me and tapped me on the shoulder. It was a German guy that I'd met 5 days ago. And again, there's that lost connection, a reclaimed connection,
Yeah.
and I'll never see him again for the rest of my life. It's
But that
gone.
doesn't
But
matter. Yeah.
and I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. And the other thing you get, just what's great is, lots of people get tattoos.
Oh,
And
really?
so I've oh yeah, you've got to get a Camino tattoo. So I've got one on the back of my leg. And so of course you're walking down the street or through a market, and people run up to you because you've got a connection. They've got their tattoo or they bought the Camino. So you can see it from a distance. So you're part of this. It's like I used to ride Harleys. So when you're out on a Harley and you see the other Harley riders, you wave. Well, Camino's like that. It's like a silent community.
Yeah.
People have got the badge on their bag or they've got the tattoo, and you know them, and you have permission to engage.
Yeah.
That is incredibly powerful. Again, if you're an introvert, it's a safe space.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It sounds absolutely fantastic. So, couple of questions. So what would you say is the most surprising thing that you found out about yourself from doing the Caminos?
I think I can do more than I thought I could. It surprised me. I did one Camino. It was like a Forrest Gump moment. And I was doing a 5-day Saria, and it was a lovely day. I just kept walking.
Yeah.
And I carried on walking and walking and walking. And I ended up doing it in 2 days. So I walked like 60k a day. But what's interesting, when I got to Saria, Santiago, I felt really rough. And I did a test and I had COVID.
Oh my goodness.
But what's interesting is, if you'd have said to me before that, could you do 60k a day? I would have gone, well, no. And I think what that does is, you talked at the very start of this about the reinforcement and the self-belief. That then made me think about doing running and then doing, okay, well, I'll do a half marathon. And so it's a celebration of self, which is really quite incredible, and it's a great experience. So I recommend anyone to do it.
And it is incredible what our bodies can actually do.
Mm.
And yet it's so interesting because often our inner psyche is for the cause of keeping us safe and alive.
Yeah.
Makes us protect ourselves, makes us not take risk so
Yeah.
much, or not necessarily believe we can do because we've had a bad experience that's made us think, oh, I don't think I can, or I can't, or we make these decisions.
Yeah.
And mostly it is that natural self-protection.
Yes.
And actually sometimes when you push against that a bit and think, well, let's just see, and you can do it very quietly, you don't need to state to everyone, I'm off on to walk this far on Camino, but to just try and see what you can do is so empowering. And I think if you can just push past the thing, or if you, again, it's back to that awareness piece, if you can notice that potentially the reason that you might be saying no either to yourself or to others might not be for absolutely valid reasons,
Absolutely.
and just potentially just say, yeah, I'll give it a try. So for example, you and your wife, if we went back 20, 25 years and you said to you both then, would you do, for example, yours 60K
Yeah.
in a day or her 100 plus Ks on her own, would you have said at that point,
Yeah.
this is what I could do?
You would never believe it.
Never.
The other thing, I think, to pick up on what you were saying, that is really powerful, possibly more for my wife than me. There's a hill on day 2 out of Portamarine, and it's basically 15K up. And she was walking up in the heat and she was struggling. But what was interesting was she started talking to someone, and in the blink of an eye, she's at the top.
It was gone. Yeah.
And I think that's the interesting thing, because the distraction. And so you've got this natural community that if you are feeling tired, just by having a conversation, all of a sudden you don't even think about. And I think that's another nice thing about it. It's always someone to talk to if you want to.
Yeah.
For her, it was transformational, because this hill is a long hill, but she just didn't even know that she was going up it.
And that just shows, doesn't it, that boost that you get from human
Yeah.
connection. And as you say, even when you're someone who just, this is not their natural default, and in other circumstances in life, they wouldn't do it. And yet you can learn so much from people, and you can be so, I mean, it comes back to why I do the podcast. I'm just fascinated by people and people's stories and their passion. And I think it's so important to share. But I don't walk up to people on the street and ask them about their story. So it's a great, this is like a version of without the walking. And so I've got a couple of little sort of more silly questions. What's one item that you always pack?
iPad.
That's so funny, because it's so sort of contrary to the natural.
It's the
so
iPad
modern.
Mini. It's because it's got my music, it's got my books, my iPad. It's just
They're really useful.
I love it. It's an incredible tool. I carry a guilt. I carry a massive guilt. And I keep weighing it and think, can I justify that? And I think, oh yeah. Because when you do Camino, you've always got a set of kitchen scales with you when you're doing Camino, because you're always weighing stuff.
Oh, okay.
Because that shirt or that shirt, there's 100 grams difference when I take that one. Sorry, carry on. You had another question.
And the final one was, what's the first thing you do when you get home?
Take my dog for a walk.
I love that answer. A bit more walking.
Yeah, well, I miss him terribly when I go, but it's kind of but yeah, it's
I love it. Walking, and a bit more walking. So if someone, I'm hoping that the point of this talk, the reason that you wanted to come on, and the reason I do it, is that it inspires someone to either get walking in when they don't see it as applicable to themselves, or to think, that sounds like an interesting challenge, and I wonder if I could do it. So what would you tell them about those sort of getting started?
Well, if someone wants to email me, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. If they want to email me about giving up drink, I'm no expert, but if they just want someone who they don't know to talk to, I'm happy to have a chat. If they want to know about Camino, please email me. It's not a problem. I was out hiking yesterday and just practicing for next week, and started talking to a woman. So I always say, go and watch the film The Way with Martin Sheen. That's the one to go. Watch that. So that's a good go-to. And then if you go onto YouTube and Google Camino, it's just a wash with things. That's the place to start, really.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So obviously it's your main point in being on here is walking. So tell me about what your next challenge is. You said you're going with your son.
I'm taking my son next week and his friend.
And has he not been before?
No.
Lovely.
And he's a big boy, so he's getting in training. And then I'm doing with my cousin in August, and that's going to be hot.
That's going to be very hot.
Going to be hot. Yeah, we're walking across the Meseta in August, which is going to be early starts. And then I'm just planning 3 next year, I think. Just waiting for the flights to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did 2 days on the Southwest Coastal Path, but I came away from that, and it was a very different experience. And what I realised is it doesn't have um, for me, the spiritual and community experience that the Camino has.
Yeah.
Whereas the Southwest Coastal Path is a great walk, but the Camino is just something different for me.
You've sold it.
And you'll get your tattoo. My wife said, I think she's had 2 Camino tattoos.
The other community that does that is the Ironmen.
Yes.
People who do Ironmen. And my husband's done several. He did several halves and several fulls. And but he hasn't got the tattoo. But he has got the bag.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he's like, that's enough.
Yeah.
I'll paint it on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your time and your experiences of Camino, but also just really inspiring people about the fact that it really is possible to make change if you want to. I love the fact that you also said it wasn't immediate and overnight, because that really is the case, but you kept on the path, you got back to it and you kept going, and you got there in the end, looking back in probably quite a short space of time. And I think that's the point, is that we have such high expectations of quick change in our lives.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen. It takes us so long, so many years to sort of get ourselves into a story, a way of being, that we can't expect ourselves to unravel from that immediately. But as we say on this podcast so much, those small changes, those little things that you add in consistently can grow into something huge. And I think your next port of call, Mick, is YouTube. I think you need to be on there doing videos.
It's a wash with people.
Yeah, but I think that as I'm told about, hopefully what I do as well, there's space for everyone. Everyone has their own unique take.
Well, I'll tell you, when you do yours, I'll come and video you.
Oh, okay. There's a deal.
Who's the radio lady who does ramblings?
Sue's gosh, what's her name?
She's got a radio series at the moment.
She's definitely Sue. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sue.
So she's got a weekly radio. She's walking different Caminos at the moment.
Oh, brilliant!
So
yes. So tune in. Yeah. And listen to that. Yeah, she's written a book about walking as well.
Right. Yeah. What's her name? Yeah. Oh, I'm getting old.
I know. Isn't that bad? I feel like I need to look it up, because it's.
And the first one, I listened to the first one. It's a lovely radio show, and I was literally crying my eyes out when I was walking down the high street. And I won't say what the message is, but it was a beautiful story. The guy she was walking with, absolutely incredible. Oh, you've got to find the name now.
I feel really bad. Do you know what? I'm quickly, even online, trying to look it up.
It's called Ramblings, isn't it?
It's called Ramblings, and we will link it in the show notes. Absolutely.
But the first one was I just couldn't believe that the guy she was walking with, his story.
It's Claire. It's not Sue.
Claire.
Listen to the two of us. Right. Claire Balding.
Right, that's it. Yeah,
Balding. Right. We've got it.
Yeah. So her first one, it was just a beautiful story about a guy and how he was using walking to heal trauma. Quite mind blowing. Yeah. So yeah, that's another one. That's another place to go to have a listen.
That's great, and we will link those in the show notes as well, so that people can go to them. And so I'll let you know when I go.
I'll see you on the road.
Yeah, you can document it. Me moaning on about my blisters. Anyway,
all right, love to see you.
Thank you so much, Mick. It was such a pleasure.
See you later. Bye-bye.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.